What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Van Chats. I'm sitting here with Andy Lakatosh, and we're just chatting, man. We got in the beginning, and next thing you know, we found ourselves just chatting, and hanging out. But like I said, in this podcast, I want to bring on personalities that I think people may not remember or may not know, and I want to get to know them as athletes. And Andy is a guy that I looked up to, and he actually left the sport before I even came to T-Town, but he was one of the fiercest sprinters America's had, at least when I was growing up through it. So Andy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I am freezing my ass off in back in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I spent the winter in California, which was not warm, but it was not PA freezing.
Yeah.
I got back on Wednesday because we opened the track here today for training, and I definitely had forgotten just how gray it is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting to a little bit later this month. And once we hit May, it usually starts getting pretty nice. But yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. And I like the intro. I like that some kind of reputation precedes me. I find the majority of my time now is spent undoing the reputation that precedes me everywhere I go.
Yeah, we'll chat about that too, man. I mean,
yeah, no worries.
Sprinting was it was a different thing at a different time. I mean, I remember when I was a Cat 3, like they were teaching us how to headbutt. Like they were like in Keirin's, like, I mean, and even some of the tracks wanted it for show. Like they were just like, oh yeah, like it makes the like, don't crash your bikes, but like it's for the show. And now, I mean, even if you're just joking around with your buddy on the track, like you might get suspended for a little bit of time. But yeah, I mean, anyways, let's just dive into a little bit about you, man. Like, where do you find yourself in the sport? And now you're working at one of it is probably the only track in the U.S. that puts on UCI racing. It is the only track in the U.S. right now that puts on UCI racing. So how did you get started, and how did you find yourself there?
So I actually grew up like my zip code was Trexlertown, right? And it's funny because the velodrome actually sits in Breiningsville. At some point they rezoned something or other. So it like the velodrome's address, the Trexlertown velodrome's address is Breiningsville, but I grew up in Trexlertown. My dad still lives 500 yards from the track. And what's funny is when they built the house, they just bought land and built a house in essentially farmland. And, wow. My parents thought that they lost the lottery when we hit the first summer, because you could see the lights and hear the announcer at our house on Friday nights. And they're like, what is this bullshit? Like is this going to happen every Friday all summer? Yep. Yeah, it is. And here's the fun part. Your kid's going to do it and eventually work there. So, we saw that for a couple of years, and then Air Products, local company that still sponsors the venue right down the street from the track. They sent out brochures and flyers for their free programs that they did here to get kids on bikes. And, that showed up in the mail one summer, and parents were like, oh, let's give it a shot. And, the first program I did was Pee Wee Peddlers, which is a program that we still have.
Yeah.
So I was a Pee Wee peddler, and for the longest time, everyone thought that was the cutest thing. So you did Pee Wees from like 7 to 9. And then at 9, you started to use a track bike. So I did that, and Air Products also sponsored that. And at the end of summer, they had a finals, and you got to race on a Friday night against the other people in the program. So all non-licensed stuff, right? Just average kids from middle schools, high schools and stuff. And so I did that when I was, 9, 10, 11. And, I'd win on a Friday. I'd win or place in the race on the Friday at the end of the year. And I was like, oh, this is fun. This is fun.
Yeah.
I like this. And then when I was 12, junior nationals came to T-Town, came here in 97. And I remember like just being so terrified, because it was like nationals, like there's going to be so many fast kids. Cause we thought in terms of like, the scope of football and soccer and baseball, like nationals is just like, you're playing against the best kids in your school, just get throttled. So that came here, had no idea what an omnium was, how any of this crap worked. And I wound up winning, and I was like, that's it. I'm hooked. This is the greatest thing ever. I wound up liking cycling over the team sports. I did soccer. We did baseball. Baseball was a family sport. And, we found cycling, and two main reasons I liked it. I liked it because it was an individual sport,
Yeah.
so you didn't have to rely on anyone. And soccer and stuff, or baseball, there'd always be a wink link or a lazy kid. And this is still something that drives me nuts in work. And part of the reason that, working in restaurants for me as a manager was so hard when I did that for a while, because I was like, it's like, man, does no one like want to try? Like everyone just wants to do the minimum and get by, And so that was one reason. Cause like, okay, this is all on me and I got no one to rely on except for myself, and no one to be mad at if it doesn't go well except for myself, which was a whole separate thing, when it doesn't go well, dealing with that. And then the second reason was just speed. God, I love going fast, and it hasn't gotten any better. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s now, and I still drive my car like I'm a teenager who stole the keys from his dad, every single time. So yeah, speed 110%. And, then I just became growing up in Trexlertown, especially in that era, late 90s, early 2000s, you really saw the tail end of the glory days. Right? We hate that term because it's never going to be the 90s or 80s here again. But, I became such a romantic about cycling and track cycling and how much fun it could be. And, it's just something that I can't get out of, and that I don't want to get out of. Every time, a little over a year ago, I was like, that's it. I'm walking from elite level of sport. I'm out of here. Don't want to deal with this bullshit anymore. And then COVID hit, turned the world upside down, and my life actually got better. Yeah. So no complaints on that. But yeah, I guess if you want to run through the quick bullet points, then I've probably retired 3 or 4 times and come back, all for different reasons. I actually just had a family that I spent a lot of time with out in LA. The father asked me, he's like, so what happened after 04? How did you not, like, you should have been a shoo-in for 08. And I started going through the story, and he's like, oh, you had a couple things happen. I'm like, yeah, I did. But I think 27-time national champion. I was Olympic alternate in 04, long team in 08, medaled at the 2007 Pan Am Games in Rio, and that was a fiasco of a trip. Junior world silver medalist. And after I retired from riding pretty much formally in 2014, I just started coaching, and really full time. Like I started in 2013, my coaching business, Big Picture Cycling, and 2014 had an accident with the motor here, and said, all right, it's time to pack that in. Started coaching and been doing that ever since. And then opportunities came up here, and I started helping out race directing, and here we are. So where would you like to start in that 20 some years of sport?
Well, I think it's pretty crazy, because I came across a rumor that you might be coming out of retirement for one more time.
That's interesting.
I mean, just with and because let's think about it. When's the last time we've had? I guess Baranowski made Rio team.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. That's the last time we've seen sprinters at the international level, and Baranowski was up there. I feel like that guy had some bad luck.
Well, yes and no. So he had one of the better runs in terms, like, if I think since 2000, right? If I think since 2000, since the end of the formal national team, right? He definitely had one of the better run-ups, and you can ask him about it. It was by no means easy, right? And it never is easy. And it definitely, again, as someone who's romantic about the sport, it breaks my heart that he got home from Rio. I saw him, I can't tell you how long after that. And he's like, dude, I just unpacked my bike. Now it was like a year plus later. He's like, didn't want to touch my bike, was happy to be out of it, had my job at PPNL. He's like, I just got into it, just walked away, and I haven't looked back. And to me, that's heartbreaking, right? Because, like, he had so much success, bunch of time World Cup medalist, right? Made it to Rio. God, he he had the out from the first round into the semis, but I think it was Skinner came by and actually did what he did to me at nationals in 2012 and squeezed me off the track. And I saw him after, I was like, Matt, all the times for you to hook, that was the one time you should have hooked. What do you got to lose? Yeah. And he's like, I know, but yeah, you know, it's so there's Matt. Before that, Jimmy Watkins went in 2012. And before that, it was, you know, Adam Duvendek, Blatchford, and Gideon. And before that, it was Gideon, Christian, and Duvendek. And yeah, we've always managed to get our foot in the door. And now, of course, the ironic, but it's not really ironic if you look at it, part is that, you know, now this time we didn't manage to qualify shit for men's spot in sprinting, but the women qualified one spot for the women in sprinting. It's like about time, right? Yeah. Like we've always had the talent. There's been a lot of missed opportunities, I think, is the nicest way to put that. But, you know, hey, there's going to be a U.S. woman in Tokyo without spectators.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, Matt was really the last one that was truly at that level internationally, right? Like you can kill it here. We host World Cups, right? We basically just hold nation cups here in the summer for our UCI events, but doing it here and doing it abroad is two totally different things.
Yeah, because it's almost like those sprinters come over in a block, you know, and
100%.
And then not only are they in the middle of a block, but we also have to look at how our Americans have to set up their system. And maybe you can help me with this disconnect because I don't understand it either. But you know, we're all time based. So if you're not running fast times, then you're not gonna go to any international competition. Just the way it is. But you know, you look at like a guy like James Millen, he's peaking throughout T-Town and he's crushing it. He's doing pretty well. And like, it's not that he's not just winning because those guys are in a block. He's also fast. Like, you can tell he's fast. But then after that June is up, he's at nationals. So now he's got to maintain his position at nationals. And then he's got Pan Am Games. But at this point, he's been racing for like 12 weeks, you know? And so now let's say that Pan Am Games does go through, the World Cup's going to be kind of a flop. So where's that disconnect for the sprinters to, I guess, train through it and still be able to go to a Nations Cup and put up a time to where they're not, you know, because I feel like, and it happens with us endurance guys, you got one chance and you're only as good as your last result.
I said that to Missy freaking 2013 LAGP. And I was like, you have a great result. I said, but it's like, you're only as good as your last result. And it, you know, when your trajectory is doing this and everything's getting better, that's easy. You're not afraid of that. Right. And then you have your first bobble and that's really tough. So let's back up a little bit. One of the things you said that I think is incredibly accurate and that we don't fully grasp is historically when the Kiwis, the Aussies, the Canadians, and everyone else come here to race in June, they are in a training block. Yeah. And what we're seeing is training form with race wheels on, right? And, you know, this is the same thing I feel that happens with the British in terms of non-Olympic racing and Olympic racing. I firmly believe we see them at World Cups, Nations Cups, Worlds in non-Olympic years, training form with race wheels on. Then we get to the games and they actually taper, right? And you're like, yeah. Oh, holy cow, right? So when I look at the Americans, right, and what's funny is like, man, I used to should have had Jim Miller on. We could have had a good laugh about this one. Yeah, I used to fight with Jim. We all did, right? It was like we want to keep like we need, and so if you've tried to go
to any international competition, you've had a hard conversation with Jim Miller at some point, no matter how good you are. Like,
well, and it's like, even when you have the speed, right? Even when you have the speed, there's still the actual ability to race, and there's the ability to get out of your comfort zone. But really, if we want to get down to it, like, you have the best conversations with Jim when you have the best mindset and mentality about it, right? When you walk into a conversation with Jim, like, Jim, I got this objective. I'm determined. Like, I got this, and this put together, but hey, I need help with this. I need help with that. Like, what's your input? How can I get there? And you have to be ready to take that input and say, okay, like, we're going to go, and we're going to go after that. And I think we get too much into the minutia of the details, right? Of like, Jim would say, okay, I want you to go in June and go race in Europe, right? And we go, whoa. We got all the racing right here. We have points. We have this. We can go faster. We have our motor, our coach. We sleep in our beds. Like, we eat our food. We don't have to take a power adapter for our computers and stuff. And so we go, no, we don't want to do that, right? Because it seems silly to do. And then when I finally got out of it enough and far enough away from it, I realized it's not that the competition's not good. It's not that that's not good. It's not any of that. It's that you need to go get your ass kicked where you're uncomfortable, and realize that everyone else is still training full gas and then gets to this next level, right? So the peak and taper and holding on to it all year and then coming into the World Cups, it's like, no, you just need to shift your priorities. Yeah. Right? You need to shift your priorities and not resist that. I mean, listen, if I was in James Mellon's position, Mandy's position, I'd be amped up for June 1st too. Like, come on, you're coming to my track. Like, let's go. And that's exactly how we used to be, And I mean, then you get into the cultural aspect of, like, if we are time driven and you're trying to peak and hit time standard and then hold up time standard. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to the individual event selection procedure, and it does vary sometimes. Sometimes there's a time standard. Sometimes there's not a time standard. Sometimes who knows what's on the website that's published. And it's like, we always got into the minutia of the details. And I was talking to Pat McDonough about this to 2019. And I'm like, Pat, you have to understand, I'm actually a lot calmer. I'm not as angry of an individual anymore. He's like, I never saw you as being angry, Andy. He's like, you just wanted clear cut, like, tell me what I got to do to get paid, and then leave me alone, and I'll see you when I do it. Right. And it's not, Chloe doesn't worry about time standards. Chloe doesn't worry about,
because she sets
selection. She doesn't worry about selection procedure, but it's just the mentality, right? She walks into that conversation of like, I'm going to go win worlds. I'm going to pull 3 medals at the games. She just knows it. Right now, when you're not Chloe, how do you build that? And we are largely time driven. And when I was out in LA and we were using that track for the last couple months, I was collecting the environmental data with Maddie, and I was just looking at it. I'm like, it is dog shit slow in this building. Very. Like, horribly slow. No wonder we can't hit time standard, plus the shape and everything else. And but big gears are, that is the way. But
isn't that funny to think about, man? Like, you used to be this hoss on a bike, and you were doing what, 95 and sheer 200s.
I posted that one post on Instagram where I found that video from 04, and I rode in 94, and I came in at 5.1 and finished 10.5 or 7 or something. So I was like, I died by a half second. And I the other story I like to tell is Gideon and I went to Worlds in 04 in Melbourne, and we both got into the Keirin, and we're sitting there trying to pick gears. And I'm like, you know what? It's Worlds. And I'd just gotten 4th at the Sydney World Cup like 3 weeks before that. I think I rode in 94 or 96. I'm like, you know what? It's Worlds. I'm going to send it. He's like, oh yeah, what are you going to ride? I'm like, I'm going to go 98. I'm going to go 51.14. He's like, whoa. He's like, man, that's too big. He's like, I got to go lighter. So I have the leg speed. And I'm like, oh yeah, what are you going to ride? He's like, 97. I can't feel the damn difference between 10 gear inches once you break 120. It all feels the same. And, we're talking about half, 3/4 of a gear inch. And I like, you look back now and you're just like, oh man, what if we just said screw it and just thrown on huge and just just let it fly. And
They
yeah,
probably
so
didn't
it's
even
come.
make it. Like, I mean, what
No,
was the biggest chain ring that you could buy back then? Now you can buy a 70.
53 was uncommon.
Yeah.
Everyone had 51, maybe 52. 53 was like, what are you doing with that? And 54 just didn't exist, right? We used to joke that like punishment in training was if you had to use a 12, right? Because we're like,
Oh,
oh my
wow.
God. No matter
Yeah.
what year, even on a 44 tooth train, we're like, it's still so big, it hurts.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even use a 16 anymore, and I don't go below a 56 chain ring. So like, what
Yeah.
are we, so it's come a long way that way. And if you look at US sprinting, I think that was all part of what factored into it. We just, Marty won in 2000 and then retired. And so funding started shrinking as we have this gap of ability and competitors and generation. And then, we'd have these little blips of like, let's hire a coach and give it a shot. Let's hire a coach and give it a shot. And in the meantime, budgets are shrinking. And, the real compounding factor for us, I think, is that around 04, 06 is when when sports science became a thing, right? And teams started having sports scientists with them. I mean, sports science in '06, you think about it compared to now is just wildly different, right?
So insane. Yeah.
And so, we were just behind this eight ball, and we were just trying to catch up and throwing monies at coaches like Gary West and trying to, like get going. And I think it just boils down to consistency and investment. And I remember I presented to Derek Bouchard Hall and Scott Schnitzbahn in 2018 when I made the board, this whole 10-year plan. I'm like, we're 10 years out from 2028. I'm like, here's the step-by-step way I would do it. Minimal investment. You get the tracks to buy in, the colleges to buy in, because I think kids should be going to school and getting that done. I'm still planning to go back myself and finish up my degree that I never completed. But, I had laid this whole thing out. And here we are, 3 years have gone by, and it's like, now they're hiring a sprint coach, right? Now the ODP, ODA is a thing, and we're making a push for it. And, it's definitely because there's got to be pressure towards 2028 and the home Olympics, which is great. But it's like, man, that 3 years, and like, how are you going to, I'm excited to see who the sprint coach is. I think that's going to be fun. That's gotta be a lot of money.
Yeah. I think, I mean, even with, but like, do you think there's any issue with the athletes? Like, I mean, by issue, I'm not saying that like we don't have the talent, because I think we have the talent. I just don't know if we have the knowledge. I I never realized how much sprinters rode until I left America.
Mm-hmm.
Like sprinters ride, dude. Teo Boss
Sure, yeah.
was in the world tour for a bit, and
Just go
so
look at the Dutch guys on Strava. They're riding all
it's
the
insane.
time. Like,
It's insane. And
but
so my question to you is like, do you feel like there's a false, like kind of like the gear reality? I think it took Americans a long time to wrap their heads around the bigger gears too. Um, do you think there's a little bit of a gym rat only persona in the American sprinting right now?
I think there's a little bit of too much of not being willing to go outside your comfort zone. I think there's too much of, I got the answers, right? I remember talking to one of our elite sprinters, 2017 Pan Am champs in Trinidad. And they were like, I'm like, oh, you think you have it all figured out? Like, yeah, no, I know what I need to do. I know how to get there. And it's like, man, you go ask Chris Hoy his last year competing, if he had it all figured out. I guarantee you he'd be like, no, I'm looking for any way to improve anything, right?
Sure.
And I think that it's very easy for us to get attached to a particular thing that works, and then I'm not going to let it go, right? I'm just going to hold on to this for dear life because I don't want to lose what's working. Sometimes that's particular effort. It's a gym workout. It's a gear. It's a training group. It's a location. Well, whatever it is, you just latch onto that and you're afraid to get rid of it. And actually, one of the things I put in my presentation in 2018 was, the millennial athlete. Like, man, the number one great thing you can do is delete social media. The second you start looking at, oh, someone rode this time, someone lifted that weight, someone did this, like
Yeah.
I gotta go do that now too, right? I post the stuff I do just for shits and giggles because I wonder who changes their gym routine because of something they saw me do.
Sure.
You know, makes me laugh. And but I largely don't pay attention to it at all, and it actually stems back to my glorious YouTube moment in 2005, and I'll get there in a second. But it's like, you know, to everyone who's like, USA Cycling needs to do something for me, or I need this, or I need that. I'm sorry. In today's day and age, with the gears and the training knowledge that is out there, men should be able to get to 9.9 on freaking youth and beer muscle. I'm not shitting you. Like, this pisses me the hell off, right? Like, the fact Leverson's going 9.2, okay? And you can say, like, okay, you know, really fast suit, 2/10 of a second. Really fast conditions in the track, maybe another 1/10 of a second, right? That brings us back to 9.5, right? The dude still rides like, what, 9.3 in his middle lap of the team sprint after a 17:0 start. And nothing to me is more impressive than watching it in person, because like him and Hoogerland literally just lay off Vandenberg. Like, you can see them, like, they do like 2-3 pedal strokes all out, and then they get into turn one and they're like, float, wait, and they let him walk away. And then as they come out of 2, they're like, all right, let's go get him. And like, you think about it, like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine if your starter is riding 18.5. No, he's going 17.0 or 16.9, and like, they're casually laying off him and running him down. So, you know, I look at the number of people that can go as fast as they can go. And I mean, yeah, you can get into conditions and skin suits and equipment and all this other stuff. But listen, like, you should be able to go to any reasonable track, rock up, and on pure strength, and I actually ride my bike, get to at least 10.099. And even then, you're not qualifying for the sprint tournament at Worlds, probably not qualifying for the sprint tournament at Nations Cup. So like, you know, whose tree are you barking up? I just noticed actually that USA Cycling updated the national team standards for gold, silver, bronze for sprinters, right? And I missed it because we're not actively chasing it. Maddie's on the program, so we're good there. And you know, I'm looking at it, and it's 10.7 for women and 9.7 for men. And you're like, and you have to do that time at the same race where you earn the result, which is, you know, Nations Cup podium, top 6 in the world, whatever it is. And you look at it and you go, like, whew, that's fast, that's steep. And then you look at how they tabulate it, and it's the 15th place from the last 2 world championships. And you're like, that's still, like, that's not even you're on the back half of the tournament.
Yeah.
Like, you got to sprint first round. You got to sprint the dude that's or girl that's closest to you in time, and pray you win, only to get matched up with the fastest qualifier the very next ride. Like, shit. So, you know, you can look at it and go, oh, that's way out of reach, and this and that. No, it's not. If my lazy, fat, old ass could get to my fastest time ever here, you know, I rode 10.5 last year on 6 weeks of messing around, going, that felt kind of good. Let's see how that goes. Then yeah, you should be able to, if you're an elite athlete and this is what you do and you're completely dedicated to it, yeah, you should be able to get down sub 10 seconds, or for women sub 11 seconds. And until then, no, I don't think you should be barking up USA Cycling's tree. You should be continuing to work, search things out. Now, we can sit here all day and say, okay, how do you create smaller steps on the ladder? But the reality is, like, if I had $1 for every time we talked about how to make smaller steps on the ladder, I could build myself a velodrome. So I think the better thing is you have your known quantities, you have your standards that you're going for, you know, selection criteria comes out, make a plan and go after it. The number of people that don't know how to read selection procedure, don't even know the UCI rules. Come on. Like when you walk in to talk to Jim Miller, you're like, I want to go to a Nations Cup, and you don't even have 250 UCI points, and you don't know there's a minimum number of points you need to just set foot on the start line, you look like an idiot.
This is the most refreshing thing I've ever heard. And And I'm gonna be honest, like I was lucky enough that I never really like because like once I made it into the men's endurance program, like I was following selection criteria, but I never really knew it. Like a lot of it's coach's discretion, which like I mean
especially in the
it's
team events.
yeah, and like team pursuit. Like I mean they could I mean in technicality, they could technically name a team and they could name like the World Cup roster, like the Nations Cup roster. They could name the Nations Cup roster and put Taylor Finney on it, even though he's retired. But they've named him. Like that's the coach's discretion. Like he doesn't have to submit a form. He doesn't have to do anything. And
Yeah.
I got a phone call. I recently got told that they're not sending anybody else to Nations Cups. And but because of COVID and the Olympic teams and budgets and whatever, and I said, okay, that's fine. Like I have nothing else. And then I'm not going to mention the name of who gave me the call, but and it wasn't Jim, it wasn't Gary. It's just somebody a lot of people might not even know. But I got a phone call, and he was like, "But I need you to know I'm going to send Lambie." And I was like, "Well, yeah, that's in the selection criteria." He's like, "Wait, so you read it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it states that in 2019, if you've medaled in that event in the World Championship, you're automatically selected to the team. Everything past non-Olympic events is all coach's discretion. So
Hmm.
if you've decided that you can't send me, then you can't send me, and it is what it is. I'm not mad that Lambie's going, and like he's the best in the world. He's one of the best in the world, right? And
Yeah.
so, unfortunately, that's one of the events I want to compete in. But yeah, it's just interesting to me too because then the next thing he said is, but it was really refreshing seeing your petition because you had a good argument, and I was the only one to submit a petition. Now I'm probably going to get a lot of flack on this that it was hard to find.
No,
Trust me, it's not that hard to find.
it's not. You just don't look.
Yeah, it's not that hard to find. It's in a drop down box. You click track, you hit major events, and there's a hyperlink. That's it. And so it's interesting.
And it's like, if you really wanted to, you could push the issue on that too.
Yeah.
Because Ted Stevens Act, they can't stop you from going. They can say, we're not going to fund it. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And it's like, if I would have known what I know now back in '04, I probably would have gone to the Olympics because I would have challenged Anjay, the coach's selection for Marty for the Keirin because he wasn't really doing track and he had gotten 7th at a World Cup, but I had gotten 4th. So like now, I would have won that argument 8 days a week with how I know how to present everything. But we didn't know. We just didn't know. And it's like, we discussed when I was on the track committee, like, should we have like a webinar on like showing people how to like do this and where it is? And it's like, unfortunately, get into this. So one of the best things and worst things about America is you can sue anybody for anything at any time. And that's unfortunately selection procedures and all this stuff and selections are sometimes like that has to be factored in, right? If you didn't submit a petition, you might not get to go just because you didn't follow the criteria. And it's so frustrating how often that happens. So, but it's one of those things where it's like for my athletes, for our athletes, and friends, we look out and make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed because you have to, or else you might shoot yourself in the foot. But one other thing that I think really hurts us here, and I thought about this earlier today before we even got on the call, but we spend too much time worrying about the damn person next to us.
Mm-hmm.
It drives me up a damn wall. And it's definitely like, I'm not sure if it's the COVID bubble that I've been living in where I've been removed from this, or if it's not being in T-Town over the winter or what exactly it was, but it's like this so worried about the other person and if they're going faster, this, that, or the other thing. And it's just this horrible negative energy. And it's like something that I grew up with tremendously because my mom was psychotic and she, like one of my best friends now, she made me hate him, Ben Barczewski, my entire junior career because he's gonna try and break your junior national records. And at the time, it was like, you can't let him do that. Like he's a prick. There's nothing I could do. He was 2 years younger than me. Like I can't even beat him in the race. If he beats it, he beats it. And like, just like this negative energy. And we definitely breed a lot of that. Like again, Chloe's not worried about making a team. Jen's not worried about getting the Omnium spot, right? And that shifts your mentality in terms of like how you approach what you're trying to do. And it's like I remember watching the Canadian girls walk in 2015 to the track in LA before for their team pursuit, right? And like they're all walking in and matching shoes and matching backpacks, and like there's 6 or 7 of them, so they know 2 of them aren't going and 1 of them's not riding. But it's like there was a culture around like I'm gonna give my best so that the team's as best it can, and if I can get selected to be a part of the team, then that's good. And that please, I'm not naive. It's definitely not that easy on the inside,
For sure.
but it's like that's the culture you got to be. Like we're going to 3 women team sprint now, which is about damn time that the UCI got their shit together on that one. But you know, we have at least 2 or 3 different sprint camps, right? Most of which are like we don't ride team sprint with anybody outside of our group or our team. And you know, then there's all this guarding about like, oh, I can't tell you what gear I ride or what time did she do in that. I have to try and better it now. And it's not done in a healthy way. And that's, listen, we have a golden opportunity. The event's going to be wide open. Like people are just getting into it, figuring it out. Like there's a real chance here for us to jump up and grab, you know, with Maddie, Mandy, and some of the younger girls coming up, there's a real chance that we could grab, or hell, put freaking Jen or Megan Jastrab on the back. Like we stand a really good chance that way too. But what's funny to me, and this is the reality check that especially men sprinters need. Okay. European Championships last fall, the Russian women did a 3-person team sprint for the first time ever. And they got within like a 10th or 2 of winning our elite men's time from nationals the previous year.
Wow.
So I'm sorry. Don't go to USA Cycling saying, I need XYZ to be a better sprinter. The Russian women could have won our nationals. Like, come on. There's bigger. No. You have to understand there's always bigger fish to fry. Yeah, I've been very angry over the last and actually I'm the happy you hit a nerve with me. I've been so relaxed. Everyone recently has told me, they're like, wow, Lackey, you're very relaxed.
Like I'm glad I like, cuz I'm just curious, cuz like I mean, like I said, you know, I brought some of the American Sprint Program boys on. Cuz I have some. Here's my thing. I'm going to be honest. Like, I should not win the kilo. I shouldn't. And here's why.
If you ride 59 seconds, you should.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't ride 59 seconds. The best I ever did was, you know, I'm talking about nationals, like to our sprinters, right? You know, my start's not that great. That's something I work on. I need to work on. But if you watch nationals, like I'm in 11th, about 500 meters in, probably like 8th at 750 meters in, but I win it at the last lap.
Yeah.
And so like I had this conversation and like I kind of I'm not gonna lie, I lost a little bit of respect for American sprinting in some regard, because it's like I know everything. I don't ride over this amount of time. 200 meter time means everything. But to me, like one of the things Brian Abers always used to tell me is like, and I wasn't even a sprinter, he was like, your 200 meter time is important for qualifying, but if you can't get through the rounds, what's the point? Like if you just can't, like if you qualify dead last, how do you get through the rounds? You know? And so it's a very interesting conversation and kind of a thought process to have with endurance. But I was impressed with the American Sprint Program because of how they decided like, okay, we lost our opportunity. Like we had this ODP program or whatever it was called. And it's gone. It's taken away from us. We had this funding. We had this. We had that. We had this. We had that. And they said, you know what? Fuck that. Like, we're going to figure it out on our own. We're going to create this program, and we're just going to keep going. And that, to me, like, was kind of refreshing to see. It, like, not that I think they just kind of quit blaming it on everybody else, and they were like, look, we're just going to do this. Like, we might not go, but maybe it sets a foundation for somebody else and creates another opportunity. Like, so what's your thoughts on these, like, programs popping up and kind of going forth?
Trying to think how honest I can be.
You can be as honest as you need to be. I think they all know they need work, you know? Like, I don't
I'm just thinking more my own political situation, but it's so let me say that every answer is my own personal, not professional, not related to big picture cycling, the work I do at the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, anything like that, right?
Mhm.
So the whole oh, the rug was pulled out from underneath us, like, well, for what do we do? Or, oh, we're going to keep going on. Yeah, no shit. If like the number of times programs have come and gone, shit's been pulled from us. I mean, just go talk to Maddie about how many cycling coaches she's been through in her career. It is mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So this, like, the whole thing dissolving within 24 months was not at all a surprise to me. And with the current ODA, I can see it being reimagined or reevaluated within 24 to 36 months. It's just the reality of these these things, and yeah, it's like, do you still have a bike? Do you still have a gym? Can you still, like, then get out and train, right? And that's the whole, stop expecting there to be something else, and get outside of your comfort zone. Like the ODP squad, the West Coast kind of group, they very rarely, so sprinters very rarely come to T-Town to race, right? And they ride nationals and that's it. And I challenge and say, like, at least come race T-Town. You should be going further away than that to race. Like, you're never gonna, speed is important, right? Like, if you can't pop off 9.5 at a real track, 10.5 as a woman, you're not getting past the first round, right? So that's the reality of this. You have to be able to go that quick, or else you're just getting up against someone who went 9.2 or 10.2 and getting your shit pushed in, and that's not enjoyable for anyone. And but you're not going to jump right there either, so there definitely has to be an investment. I mean, it's going to be, I know USA Cycling's got to be looking to 2028 and got to be thinking, we got to start investing and start taking people and giving them chances and stuff, and that's great. But shit, that's going to be here before we know it. I mean, just think about, Tokyo's going to finish in August, and then in theory, the next Olympic quad, or the next, the Paris qualifying, if they do 2 seasons again, is going to start in April. What is that? 8 months later, right?
Yeah.
So we're literally going to roll right off of one and right into the air, because in theory, it should be Worlds 2023 should be the final event for select. If they keep the same pattern, they could shift and say, maybe we'll count the Nations Cups in 2024. But so that's going to be one. Sorry, jumping back to one of our early points about, racing here and travel and stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the shift back to the summer season, because we're going to have Nations Cups, April, May, and June. They're going to have this large gap to Worlds, right? 2023 Worlds is going to be the all Worlds in August or whatever it is. But otherwise, we're looking at probably like an October World. So I wonder, like, what kind of form will people be on when they come to T-Town in June or July? And Commonwealth Games 2022, Pan Am Games will be in there 2023. It's going to be an interesting couple of years with this shift back to the summer season. But I like the variation. I wish we still went to truly different tracks. I wish we still went to outdoor tracks for Worlds or Nations Cups. I wish we went to 333s, hell, even a 400, because then the track becomes, see, this is how I'm like a romantic about the sport. I like when the track becomes a player in the type of rider that stands the best chance of winning. Yeah. So, I think that's fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, so I don't want to keep you all day, and I got 2 more questions. I got our final question, but man, one thing that's always sat with me, and we chatted a little bit about this before, is so I ask everybody when they come on the podcast if there's a few things I can't talk about, and this one didn't come up. So one of the first Americans, like when I first heard about who you were, I watched Keirin Carnage on YouTube.
Keirin Carnage.
Keirin Carnage, and they called it was a Keirin Carnage or something. It was something.
Yeah.
There was some runoff on his name, and it's with Jamie Carney. And if you haven't seen the video, I'll put a link in the description below, because I think it's still on there. But it's pretty intense. I mean, you got Marty running in the infield. You grab Jamie Carney's handlebars and knock him on his ass. It's wild. So yeah, let's chat about that. How did that all come about? Where did that even come from? Was there something said in the race? What happened? What's your
So,
story? What's Andy's truth?
so trying to think how you can wrap all this in. So, all right. So if we talk about what was going on in T-Town at that time, right? We're coming off of the 90s and the early 2000s, really aggressive style racing, right? Like, and we're also talking about, I was the first victim of social media. And see, here's the thing. That thing didn't even go to YouTube, right?
Yeah.
That video initially, and where all the fallout came from, was on Fixed Gear Fever, right?
Okay.
And I'll get to that in a second, because that wound up shaping a lot of who I am now and how I handle stress now, and rumors and all the other BS. But so we so it was a very aggressive culture of racing, and there'd been a number of see, now I look at it and I'm like, Carney and I were very similar in the sense of, we studied the rule book, found exactly where we could bend the rule to right before it's about to break, and then go, whoa. Didn't break the rule though. Didn't break the rule.
Yeah.
And now that's why I'm so good as, UCI race director and stuff like that. Cause I understand the rules really, really well, and how to operate within them. But, so there was a lot of anxiety coming into that night, and, oh, Carney races like a dick, and someone's gotta really, really show him what's up and stuff. And, the funny truth is, I largely consider, like, if I think about like being aggressive and getting confrontational and, like knocking people down or looking at a fight and walking into it instead of walking away from it, largely I'm scared shitless. Like, to be completely honest with you, I don't, the running joke we had over the winter was wake up and choose violence, right? And it's like, like, yeah, that's what I do. In reality is I actually don't. But I look at certain instances like the Carney thing, or there was a crash at Pan Am Games in 07. The guy like tried to run me off the track, wasn't looking, ran into me, fell over, and I was running around going, don't get up, like, just stop. Like, I'm gonna be so mad if you get up. Another time, Roberto Chiappa came to race, and I aggressively pinned him at the rail here in a 3-up sprint until the end of turn 3. And he spent the next 3 weeks in T-Town, every time he saw me, going, F you, F you, F you, F you. But it was all he would say to me, right? He just, every time, F you, F you, F you. And what's funny is, like, they're like, why'd you do that? I'm like, well, I'm sick of him coming here and taking our prize money and getting his flights paid for. And I said, enough is enough, right? And it's like, I look at those moments where I choose violence, and I'm like, okay, maybe I do have a little bit of violence in. But anyway, the Carney thing. So it was a tense night, right? And there was definitely two separate camps. And what my story is that my best friend Ben Barczewski was behind me, and we're starting to make a run, and Carney swings from black line to above the blue, and this is where the camera angles change. And there was a wide open door that I would have taken if I was driving a semi truck. And of course, Ben was the same as me, so he's like, I'm going for it. And so he shoots it. Carney comes down, knocks him over, right? And you can argue all day about, like, right away, did Ben put his wheel where it didn't belong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it was a tense night, to say the least. So I'm pissed. And so I kick it into gear, make my best effort to win the race, don't win the race. He's celebrating. And at the time, I'm looking at it like, he's celebrating about knocking down my friend, right? And that's where the majority of the rage came from for me. And I just took my hand, swiped his handlebars, and, put him down. And instantly then I'm riding around the next lap like, oh shit's about to get real now. And so some of the, everyone on the infield's ready to fight. In the meantime, Carney's popped off his sneakers, and they don't show us in the video. He chases me underneath the bridge in turn 1 up to the rail, trying to tackle me off my bike. Right now, if I would have let him tackle me, we'd probably be having a very different discussion, because there would have been this, like, retaliation and stuff. And So long story short, it got from there, it got very ugly. And I learned intimately how the grievance arbitration policy works within USA Cycling and the rules.
Yeah.
And it would not be it would not be the last time I would have to deal with this. And I got suspended for 6 months and served that, couldn't race. But there was a police report filed. I had to go through that. And I was 19 at the time. And so when you actually take a couple steps back, I have to explain what actually went into all this personally, right? So 04, I narrowly missed making the Olympic team. And it was down to me and Adam Duvendek, and we were the same time every day in training. Like one effort, I'd be 1,000 faster. Next effort, he'd be 1,000 faster. And Andre gives me the, Lucky, I don't know what to do. You guys are same speed. One effort he faster, one effort do faster. And ultimately he picked Adam because he was a little bit older and felt that on race day, Adam would have the best chance of not, choking. Then the whole Keirin thing was a separate thing for Athens. But we so there's that. So I was pissed off about that. I'd done a winter at Penn State main campus, and I didn't get good grades. I didn't do well in a biology class of 800 students and stuff. So that didn't go over so well. And I came home and was just pissed off and trying to like get form back and just like prove that I was still like good at something. Because I didn't feel very good. I'd gained some weight and stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna make this happen one way or another. And so then that all transpires. And the funny thing is 2 months after that, my parents would wind up starting their incredibly ugly, aggressive, nasty divorce. And so if you actually like step back and go, I wonder if he was a little stressed in general, right? Like, was I an on edge kid at that time? Probably. My whole house kind of was. So that goes into it. But a big part of the reason I say get rid of social media and don't pay attention, or I don't pay attention to social media, is what transpired after that, right? So Fixed Gear Fever was a website run by this guy, Scott Patton, who was out in Colorado Springs. And at the time, Scott, I would say probably was not my biggest fan. There'd always be some like little quips and, passive aggressive kind of remarks to stuff about me. And, it just, it was what it was. But so he got a hold of the video, posted it, and then started the forums. Right. And this is before comment sections on Facebook and Instagram. And
forums are a thing.
So
that was your Facebook wall back in the day.
Yeah. Well, so what would happen was we didn't really have internet access as kids at that point. Not like we do now. You didn't carry it around on your phone. So my psychotic mother would sit at work and just go through and read every person's comment and try to figure out who their handle was and who it actually was and stuff. Then she'd print these things out and bring them home and shove them in my face at like 19 years old. About look at what this person said, look at what that person said. And you have to hate this person. You have to hate that person. And at first I'm like, yeah, like fuck that person. Like, how dare they say that? They don't know me. They don't know this. They don't know the other thing. And a lot of it really hurt. A lot of it really, really hurt. Just sitting there going like, like, God, all these people actually really feel this way about me here. I thought I was liked or at least respected. And, like, God, that really sucks. And eventually it got so exhausting, like just like cripplingly exhausting, trying, like I was fighting all the time, that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And like one day she brought more printouts home and I just crumpled them up and threw them. I'm like, I never want to see them again. I'm like, I can't, this is exhausting. People are going to think what they're going to think and they're going to say what they're going to say. And that's all there is to it. And like, I just want my peace. Right. And so that was a lot of the reason why I don't really look at other people's things on social media. I brush it off. If I do see something, I don't get wound up about it. And, to this day, that same family I was spending time with in Los Angeles, they are playing a game one night. And one of the questions is, what's your most proud accomplishment. And it took me a second. I sat there and I go, my most proud accomplishment is when I genuinely change somebody's mind about who they think I are or who they think I am.
Yeah.
And it stems from that, right? It 100% stems from that people genuinely think I'm this like ultra angry asshole, like just aggro all the time. If they watch me race a bike, or if you come to me in the middle of a UCI event with a really dumb question that's written in the tech guide, or you come to me going, I need free entry, and you're bringing nothing to the table, yeah, you're probably gonna get a very salty version of me that's like, no, absolutely not. Like we have a business to protect. We have a legacy to protect. Like, we have to preserve that this place carries on. So no. And, but when I get someone that, I tell a story or spend some time with them and stuff, and they go, hey, you're genuinely different than I thought you were. Like, to me, that's the absolute greatest accomplishment. That trumps going to the games, that trumps national champion, that trumps record holder, that trumps all that for me. When someone is genuinely like, hey, I think differently about you now. And that's probably my biggest accomplishment. And it's an uphill battle. It's one I definitely won't win largely.
For sure, but I think that'll come across in this podcast. Honestly, I mean, like even I mean, we've had. I mean, this is the longest conversation we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in passing, I know who you are. You know who I am. We say hey, and that's about it.
When we see each other at events, it's like there's no time, right? No. I'm coaching, you're racing, like we're doing our stuff, going opposite directions. There's not a lot of time to honestly, like one of my favorite people to talk to is like Brian Abers, Pete Taylor, Andy Sparks, right? We always find ourselves on the backstretch at national championships and big races. We're always, it doesn't matter year, doesn't matter what championship, we're standing there having the same like 3 conversations, right? Yeah. Like, what is our dumb athlete doing on the track right now? The opposite of what we just told them to do. We said, don't go for the first sprint. What do? They go balls out for the first sprint. And we just like shake our heads and go, what the hell? Talking about the state of US cycling and what we could possibly do to make it better. And then going, man, we need some beers. And then the third one is just like glory days, reminiscing stories and stuff. Like if you want to have a good podcast, just set a microphone up on the backstretch at a championship event, and we'll just start telling stories. So
no, for sure. Well, cool, man. Well, let me get this one last question in, and I think I prepped you with it, but if not, I think you'll probably come up with a good answer. So every time we ask every person that comes on this podcast if they could have coffee, and if you don't drink coffee, if you could have a beverage with one person, dead or alive, who would that person be and why? And how would you take your coffee, or what would your beverage be?
Well, so one, it would definitely be coffee. I actually haven't had any alcohol since December 2019.
Awesome. Wow.
I was in a very not great place. This is one of the things I intended to get to with my social media that I just got too busy and haven't had time to do. But I was very, very really like suicidal at the end of 2019. It was not a good year for me in a lot of different ways, personally, professionally. Like it sucked, and I didn't see things in the sport getting any better for me. And that was part of the reason I said I'm retiring from elite coaching and stuff. And I was tremendously out of shape and I was unhealthy mentally. And I feel very lucky that I made it through that. And then, end of February 26th, I won't forget that. I had a conversation that really could have broke me. And instead I was like, that's it. I'm making a change. Like I'm not letting this end me. And then COVID hit. And for me, COVID hit, and there was a much greater sense of like, I have a purpose now. Right. Like this is when I feel like I need to lead, because people are lost and confused and don't know what to do. And so I was like, all right, I'm pushing forward. And then that's what led to the training and stuff. And yes, I am probably making a comeback if I continue to have time. I'll say this. So I whacked off like 35 or 40 pounds in like 3 or 4 months. last
Wow,
year.
congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I got to riding and put out some good times. And this winter I went to LA and kept training, worked my strength coach, worked my nutritionist, and reset my entire power curve over the winter. And even though training's been a little bit of a cluster in 2021 because of how busy I've been, we're still going to have some fun and play around this year. How much I get to play around, who knows? But the difference is now, like, if I have to miss training because I got work or life or something else, it is what it is, right? Like there's bigger things going on. But so I definitely drink coffee. I only drink coffee black, no sugar, no cream. And I'm also, some people will think I'm absolutely insane. I'm either iced coffee or just lukewarm. I don't like hot coffee.
All right.
I can't do it. Who would I, who would I have coffee with?
Dead or alive, it can be anyone. Just
See,
that,
and
that one special person that you think that, like, man, I would really just love to sit down with them and chat.
I would say, so obviously I love stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we said we were going to swap some war stories and we didn't even get to it. I mean, I was actually going to tell you,
save it for another podcast, man.
Literally just pick a year or just pick an age and tell me an age and I'll walk you through step by step. There's something funny that happens every single week with me, but I definitely value all of the, what I used to say that, like, you would get caught in the T-Town vortex. And I loved it. I absolutely love that about this place. And it doesn't happen as much anymore. And that really is sad to me. But what I mean by the T-Town vortex is we would finish training, you'd motor pace from 10 to 12:30-ish. You get out of there, walk out into the parking lot, and you have this big shade tree where it used to be right next to where my truck is parked right now, and be a hot summer day. It's this big shade tree, and we'd all just like come out training drunk, as we called it, just annihilated. And we just like sit there for a moment after putting our bikes in the barn and like shoot the shit for a while. And then, like, Gil was always around, Gil Hatton, and he'd come out, and we'd sit there and we'd start swapping a story too. And then Marty would come out from the office and we'd start telling war stories. And then what's his name, Heinz Walter would happen to come by, or Jack Symes would come by, and before you know it, you're caught in this like run of stories, right? And we're going about everything from Panasonic Shimano days to this one year at Junior Worlds, Whitehead crash, and we're just like retelling story after, and you just didn't want to leave. You were exhausted, you were hungry, you were thirsty, but it's like, I even remember thinking at the time, like, man, these are the like magical kind of like moments and stuff. And like, you gotta stay. You just gotta stay and keep listening. And, I at the very end, I stopped taking them for granted, but I say all of that to say that, like, I remember we'd get to nationals. And same thing, the way I see Abers and I see Sparks, I see all these guys, and we start, telling stories and laughing and stuff. We always used to see, I remember being a junior, and Mark Whitehead, right? Mark Whitehead was there, and he coached Hammer, and Gil coached Sarah Ewell and Lauren Franges and Ashley Kim and all these girls that competed with Sarah Hammer. And it'd be all the TA girls versus Hammer, and it would be ugly. It'd be so ugly. And like, Gil and Whitehead would be screaming at each other and slinging curse words, and they're dirty racing and this, that, and the other. Teach your girl how to ride a bike. And I'm like, who is this guy starting to fight with Gil? Like, he has no idea what he's doing. Like, is he out of his damn mind? And like, they're going back and forth the whole week. And then someone's like, I'm like, who is that? They're like, oh, that's Gil's best friend. I'm like, what? Who? like they obviously hate. She's like, no, they're best friends. And so Whitehead is the guy that pops to mind because he's not with us anymore, right? And I've said for a couple of years, and with the way the social scene is now, this will never happen. But I I always said I wanted to do like a T-Town storytellers thing where we'd all get together, get all the old characters together around a table, have dinner and a bunch of wine and just a bunch of cameras and just record all the stories. Because once, like, I'm trying to remember all of them, but once these are just the ones I've heard. Once they're gone, like that's it. They're gone. We'll never have these stories again. And Whitehead had no shortage of these stories, and I literally have like 6 of them popping into my head right now. And man, just to have coffee, or he'd be having beer. Definitively, he'd be having beer and just be like,
no matter
hey,
what time.
yeah, oh, no matter what time, and he was. I was trying to explain this to. He was you either loved him or you hate him. There was no middle ground. And I was trying to explain to Missy, I was like, Whitehead, I'm like, you would hate you like his personality would be like no, he's a horrible person. I'm like, but here's the thing. Once you were in, right? Once he had a reason to respect you as an athlete, then he'd fight for you to the absolute end, right? And that's something that I always admired about him, admired about Gil and stuff, was like they ask so much of you and they don't do it in the nicest way always, and they push you to the absolute limit, beyond the limit you thought you had. And some days you hate him. I used to say so often that like Gil, a good day of training with Gil was when you were invisible. Yeah. When he didn't see you, he didn't say anything to you, good or bad, right? But if he said something good, man, that was going in my journal when I got home, because I was like, I can't believe Gil said you did good today. Like, that is fantastic. And but like for everything they asked you, and as hard as they rode you and as aggressive as they could be, you did it for them without hesitation, because you knew that they had your back on race day definitively, right? Like no one. And that was one of the final little anecdote that I'll tell. I'm actually like feeling a little bit choked up talking about these guys, but everyone's like, Lackey, why would you race like such an asshole against the national team? And so it was like the national team versus us, and we always called ourselves the dark side, and it was us versus the national team. Jeff LeBeau, Garth Blackburn, Gideon was on the national team, and like I'm like 15, 16, 17 years old. I have no reason to be at elite nationals or wherever I am, and I got Gil and Whitehead sitting over there in the corner, and they're like, all right, you're gonna get so and so next round, and they were like, you should really stick it to him. They're like, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to roll off the line immediately. Like, you're going to draw position 2, roll off the line, chop him off the track, get right to the front, right? Like, clear off the track. They're going to immediately try to like get back in front of you, take them to the rail, right? And then do whatever you have to do to stay in front of them. They're going to get really pissed. They might curse at you, like, and just hold them as high as you can, as long as you can. If you got to come down, but then hook them at least the width of the black line to the blue line, no matter where you're on the track, right? And they would just wind me up. And now in retrospect, they were doing it for their own personal entertainment, right? This was the greatest live show of all time, because they were getting someone to go do, and I would, whatever they said, I was like, absolutely, I'll do that, right? And so I'd come in, I'd have this, mid-late 20s elite big athlete ready to just throttle a freaking 17-year-old kid, and I come in and I do it fearlessly, because I was like, I'm riding right into Gil and Whitehead's corner, and nobody's gonna fuck with me, because they're gonna have to come through both of them to get to me. I was like, nah, I'm good. So I would go out there, I'd execute it perfectly. I'd come in, the officials would be warning me or relegating me. I joke with Noreen, Andy McCord, and Randy Schaefer. I go, hey, who are the 3 you think has relegated me the most? and Noreen's like, I think it's me. I go, yeah, I think it's you too. And so, they would warn me and need to talk to me. The riders are screaming at me. Someone else saying, Lackey, you little piece of shit, right? Like, and I get into the corner, and Gil and Whitehead would stand there with their chests out, like, and What, what, you can't take a little beating from a 15-year-old kid? Like, what do you cry? Like, come on, toughen up. Right. And then they turn around and walk over. I'm sitting there, like, my headphones on. They like give me the little like hand out behind, like high five, like, backwards at their hip. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, Lucky. That was awesome. Way to stick it to them. And so that's, that was a big part of the reason why I felt fearless, as those guys, they had your back. So that's an incredibly long-winded way of saying, I would want to get coffee with Whitehead, or just have another T-Town Vortex day that I'd just never get out. I'd never leave the parking lot. I'd just sit there and listen to it all day, because that's just the best stuff, man.
No, that's awesome, man. And like I said, man, I really appreciate you coming on. And we've never really chatted. Like, I mean, I knew who you were growing up, and in coming into the sport, you had no idea who I was. But got to know me over the years, me coming to T-Town and bugging you and asking you, hey, how do I find housing? How do I do this? How do I do that?
Here's what I'll say about you. And every athlete should take a lesson out of your playbook on this one. Email directly, follow instructions. No, sorry. Before you even do that, read the website, read it very carefully, follow instructions, complete everything. Email, say, hey, submit this just to make sure you get it. Thank you very much for this. I really look forward to it. Like just and you don't have to kiss my ass. I don't want my ass kissed. I just want you I just want the respect and appreciation, and that's one of the most frustrating things that comes the most from our local crew. But it's like, man, there's a ton of work that goes into these UCI events and the seasons. And I literally agonize for weeks, if not months, over like, okay, how can I set this schedule up to be perfect?
Yeah.
To fit everything in. Everyone gets the proper amount of rest. We do a complete sprint tournament, Keirin tournament, UCI Omnium with qualifying heats, because we got 60 men that want to ride the Omnium. How do I get all this perfect? And then to have hey, Lackey, this really sucks, is like, so yeah, just like take a page out of your playbook and, be polite, be courteous, and understand that we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
We're the only track that does it.
Well, I always think that's funny, and that's a conversation for another day, but it's like the classic, everybody's upset that there's no bike racing, but the moment bike racing come back, we just complain about bike racing. And so I never know how to make somebody happy. But anyways, well, man, again, thank you so much for your time. Guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you go check out the Velo Sports Center, and go check out Big Picture Cycling and Andy on social media. Even though he hates it, just go say hey. He's a good dude. He'll tell you some more stories. And thanks again, man, for being super vulnerable with us, telling your story. I think it's awesome. And hopefully people get to know you a little bit better just through this. So, all right. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, man. It was fun.
Cheers.